Hello and welcome to another episode of Real Bike, Real Bikers, the series where we talk to people about their biking history, what bikes they currently have, and what they would like in an ideal world. Today we're going to be talking to Jamie.
Right.
So, hello Jamie.
Hello.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about how you got into biking and how you passed your test?
I'm Jamie Walker. I'm 44 and I work as an electronics technician in the sonar field. And basically I got into bikes. My dad was a biker before I was born and had Ariels and was a bit of a cafe racer guy. And the reason why I really got into bikes, was bike racing. I love Valentino Rossi, Carl Fogarty as a kid, kind of growing up, and really got into the racing side of it. But I was so into cars, and I never really translated that into bikes until I was in my 20s.
Okay.
And then I just hung around with bikers and kind of got into how easy bikes are to look after, how little space you needed to store them, and how much fun they were. So
kind of a bit of the ability to actually run it and maintain it and use it yourself and own it, but also you didn't need to have the space, etc.
Yeah, because I had 5 BMW cars everywhere, so it was getting ridiculous.
So you needed more engines, but less space.
Basically, yeah. And the fact is you can stick them in the garage and forget about them as well over winter. So it's more fun and less aggro, basically, a bike.
Okay. So you're mid-20s.
Yeah.
Did you just go and do your test? Did you do a intensive course? How did you get your bike license?
I did it a weird way. I bought a GZ125 Marauder Suzuki. I did a CBT just for fun. Me and my brother splitting the money for the bike. It was about 500 quid and we went 250 each. And we both rode around on it for about 2 years. And at the end of it, we're like, oh, we're going to lose our CBT. We may as well book in for a test. Andy, my brother, he just went in on the 125, got his limited license, that 33 brake horsepower thing. And what I did, I had a mate who was a motorcycle tester, and I wanted to get straight on a big bike basically, so I did a 6-lesson course, went straight for my direct access and passed it first time.
So you beat me by one.
Yeah. But
when you did your test, was it the option of going for an A2 or an A1 license?
I can't remember. It was the last day of the old direct access.
Okay, yeah. So what was that, about 2000?
07. Yeah. Or whenever that ended, I can't quite remember, but I think it was about 2007.
Okay, so you're mid-20s, you've passed your test, so you can get a big bike.
Yeah.
What did you go out and buy?
Well, that's the weird thing. I already had bought a couple of big bikes. My first bike I ever bought was a mint condition 1958 AGS.
Oh, an old bike?
Yeah, a classic, which had the gear shift on the wrong side and drum brakes, and it was a bit of a weird purchase.
So how long before your test had you bought?
I think about 06 I bought that.
So a long time it had been sitting in your garage?
But I was riding it because I lived in the middle of the country.
Whoa. So going back just a second so I can re-edit.
Yeah.
So it was a long time before your test you bought it, and obviously you rode it on private land.
Yes, obviously, yeah, like a good boy.
Yes.
Yes, I had that for a while, but I realised it was such a difficult bike to ride. It was great, but really heavy, single-cylinder, chunky thing. It almost locked up on the downshift. So I thought, not a good bike as the first bike. So I kind of sold that, and I bought a 2004 Bonneville Triumph.
Had you bought and sold your first big bike before you even got your test?
Yeah. I had the Bonneville sat there before I did my. That was my kind of like motivation to pass my test. Yeah. Like, I'm lazy if I don't have a carrot, and I bought the Bonneville as my reward for passing my test, basically.
And us bikers, we have a tendency not to keep bikes for very long, or keep more than one bike. So what happened next?
Right, I passed my test and I did keep that. That's one of the longest bikes that I've ever had. I had that right up until I bought a flat, and I had to sell it basically. It was like selling a kidney. That thing, I loved it. It's funny because I was on a 125 for quite a while, which was 12 bhp. I passed my test and I had the Bonneville, which is about 60 odd, and then I went straight to a Kawasaki ZX9R, which is like 10 times the horsepower of the 125 in quick succession. So in a space of time, I'd gone from like a 125 to a super bike in about 6 months. So it was a bit of a jump, and I had that for a little while, and I realised it was too nutty, too crazy.
I was going to say, you've had very powerful cars over the years as well. Certainly with my biking history, I went up a little slower than that, and it's quite surprising how much difference that power makes.
Massive.
Was it that for you were too crazy for the bike, or the bike was too crazy for you? Do you know what I mean?
A bit of both. Not experienced enough, and just crazy power. I mean, the funny thing is, it's not that powerful a bike now. It's 135 horse. If you compare that to the latest S1000 Beamers, they're like 200 standard. So
well, even the 1250 RS behind me,
these are all 100
yeah.
horsepower bikes, aren't they? They're sports bikes. They're so fast that the operating kind of remit of them, you kind of, if you tootle around on them, they're not fun. You have to rev them and you have to kind of get them singing to actually make them fun, because they're a bit, there's the heavy bars are down low, legs are up high, and the engines are peaky. Yeah. So you've got to get them up in the rev rate, a bit like a Honda Type R kind of car. They if you make them sing, they're great.
Fly.
They do. But like if you try and use the torque like a diesel, they're not good. So after that, basically, I got into more torquey bikes. I figured out that Japanese 4 screamers are a little bit peaky, so I went for more BMWs and kind of lower revving kind of torquey bikes.
And how many different bikes do you reckon you went through over the years? So we're talking about, we're 2023 now, so 15, 16 years.
It's about 40. It's not as many as you think, actually. Okay. I'm quite surprised. When I looked through the list, I thought I'd had more. There's ones I kind of bought and sold, but there's ones that stuck around for 10 years. Like my Bonneville did, and I had my Drifter for a long time.
Your Drifter?
What that is it's basically a Japanese knockoff of an Indian. Basically, they did a mid-90s Harley-Davidson kind of lookalike Kawasaki, which was a shaft drive, typical kind of Japanese cruiser, but they did an experiment with like a American customizer called Tom Berg to kind of commission a replica of like a 1940s Indian Scout. And they did this as a concept bike, and they put it on a show in America, and reaction was crazy. So basically, they went back to Japan and engineered this thing. And it looks fantastic. It looks like a pure 1940s Scout. It's a beautiful looking thing. And people actually think, when I'm out on it, it's a classic Indian. People come and stop me and say, oh, what year is that from? And I'll say, oh, it's like 2001. But it's great. It's got shaft drive, fuel injection, good brakes. Yeah, it looks like something off a wartime film almost. It's a cool bike. Yeah, really big. It's like riding a Cadillac almost. It's soft suspension and squishy. You'd have a real shock if you tried the front brake on it. There's no front brake. It's terrible. It's a cool bike. I love it. And it's got a real, I wouldn't say attitude. It's not that nasty, but it's
a presence almost.
It's and it's not something other than spending 16 grand on a proper Indian. I bought it for 3 grand, and I sold about 800 quid's worth of bits that I got on it. So it stands me about 2.2. So it's an incredible bike. I've got like a 10 grand looking bike for I know that sounds exaggerating, but
no, it is a lovely bike.
It's an incredible looking bike for the money.
Actually, while we've touched on that subject, go through your kind of principle of buying bikes, selling the bits, and that sort of thing. Yeah,
basically, when you buy a bike, go for the loaded bike, like with all your givey luggage and screens and stuff, because I don't like that stuff. I like bikes, particularly with retro bikes, like all that stuff off. What I do, I get a fully loaded bike often and stick all the stuff on eBay. I've done it with this Moto Guzzi that I've got now. I've got loads of accessories with it, and they all go on eBay, and I strip it back to the basic bike that I like in the first place. And the worst thing to do is when you get a fully loaded bike, you've got the Puig screen, you've got the givey luggage and all the hand warmers and everything, and all the expensive crash bars and stuff like that. Nobody ever turns up and says, oh, that bike's worth, the 700 quid you put into it. It's always worth the flat kind of fee, maybe a little bit more, but you never actually get that money back. So you're better off getting all that stuff and sticking it on eBay. And getting money back.
And it's a tip I've taken from you when I've sold my bike since. I've stripped them before selling them.
Bare bones, I've had it a lot where I've bought like a bike at market value, but I've turned it into a bargain by getting rid of all the stuff that I've got on it.
And I suppose also if someone's fully loading a bike, they're probably taking care of the bike as well, which means that you're more likely to get a better bike as well.
And the thing is with these accessories as well, they're kind of one person's thing that they think is brilliant is another person's nightmare. Like all the stuff on the Drifter, it was tassels and Americana and Route 66 type cheesy stuff. And what I've done, I've stripped it back to a real bare bones kind of Americana bike, and it looks awesome. And somebody else can have all those trinkets and weird stuff that
and enjoy them.
And they'll think it's great, but I think it's a bit bloody, I don't know, a bit cabaret kind of vibe. I don't know. You get all these people with matching jackets and stuff, and tassels and stuff, and that kind of Route 66 stuff I'm not really into, to be honest.
But then that's what biking is about. It's about what suits you, isn't it? Rather than everyone's different. And so it's one of the nice bits about it. All right. So we've talked a little bit about your bike history and other stuff, but actually looking at these 40 odd bikes that you've had over the years, what really stands out for you as the ones that you had and are worth talking about as such?
More the retro bikes. Like I've had a few kind of GS500 commutery boring stuff, but I really love real classic style bikes that retro moderns, particularly the kind of charisma of those kind of bikes. I mean, you like the Z900 Kawasaki, don't you? And I love that. That's absolutely my thing. And I think the thing is about those type of bikes, if I open the garage and it looks like the 70s in there, I don't have to fix anything, and kind of they all work when I press the button. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, good brakes and stuff.
You couldn't really deal with the unreliability of a proper old English bike or that sort of stuff.
I've done it twice. I've had an Ariel Huntmaster and that 350 AJS, and they're great, but the brakes are terrible and they leak. And they've got great charisma, they're cool, but they are very agricultural. Even that R100 BMW, very clunky, the gearbox is like a tractor transmission. Whereas the modern bikes have got all that taken out of them, and they're a lot more slick and efficient, yet still retain a lot of charisma and that chunky feeling that I really like. Yeah, that's kind of my thing, really. I'm not so much into the plastic covered.
You says looking at my bikes.
But it's, well, your ones are sports tourers, but the modern kind of sports bikes that are very, they're almost like each manufacturer paints them a different colour, and they're all straight fours, and they broadly operate on a, this one's like 3 bhp faster, or 3 bhp more, or a little bit faster, and it's such a narrow, they're all chasing that lap time or that metric, whereas like I like bikes that go out on a limb and they'll have a triple in it, or like like these, like a flat twin or something like that, and the architecture of the bike is around the engine, which I really love, like Moto Guzzis and BMWs and triple kind of Triumphs and stuff are really the thing, really.
So what else in your history of bikes then really stands out to you?
The flat twin Beamers were brilliant. They're an addictive bike in that whole Bavarian kind of shake that they've got, and the way you tip them into a corner and you feel that momentum wind up. It's everything that should be wrong or engineered out of a bike, but it's weirdly addictive. And I know a guy who bought a GS many years ago, and he spent 12 grand on it. He bought it new, and they were 12 grand at the time, and he actually rode it home, and he cried because he thought like he'd spent that much money on this thing, he'd pissed all this money away. And he hated it, he despised it, because he was used to kind of really smooth, clean bikes with all the kind of quirks taken out of it, and he was stuck with it. And after about 6 months, he loved it. It was like and he's like a big BMW guy now, and he never rides anything else. So it's kind of quite weird how they get into your system.
But then, I mean, you look at Triumph with their triples, you look at BMW with the flat twins, even NC 750Xs I've had, where they actually deliberately make the engine feel rougher in order to give it a bit of extra character.
That's what a lot of companies do. Harley do that deliberately. They do their firing order offbeat, and they counterweight their crank, so it's deliberately like the engine's wonky to give it character. Triumph did that with the Speedmaster as well. They kind of deliberately off-weighted the crank to give it that rumble. It seems weird to actually design an engine purposely bad.
Purposely characterful, maybe.
But like the Japanese, with all their stuff, they'll try and do it as smooth and efficient as possible, but like they deliberately make it quirky and odd.
But then, I mean, is there any great difference between deliberately making your engine slightly quirky and deliberately, for example, giving a very retro look to a bike, rather than, it's a way of making it stand out?
The point is we'd all be driving Nissan Micras if we didn't want charisma, and that's the point, isn't it? We don't do this to ride something the most efficient way to work. It's a living experience riding bikes, and you don't want the most sensible thing with all the quirks and stuff ironed out of them. You want something with a bit of zing, and kind of
something that's going to put a smile on your face and make you feel special.
Because that's why we all do it, really.
Okay, so we've gone a bit through your biking history. So what now? What have you got in your garage now?
Two of the bikes are like two that I've had before that I had to sell when I bought my property. The Kawasaki Drifter 1500, which is fortunately the two bikes that I've got now are a lot better versions of the ones that I had before. Like the original Drifter was really rusty and gacky. Lived outside all its life, so I've got a much better Drifter now. And my Bonneville that I've got another 2004 Bonneville, exact same year as the original one, just in better condition, like 4,000 miles from new.
So when I've gone back to a bike, I found it a bit kind of like boring. How about you going back to something that you've known so well before?
Just because I love those two particular bikes, and they really are my two favourite bikes that I've ever had. and I regretted selling the original ones, and despite the fact that they were worse, not so much the Drifter but my Bonneville, even though my original Bonneville was worse, because it was my first big bike, I'd trade my good one for the old Cat Z one. Yeah, it's weird, but I would do. And my other bike that I've never had before is a Moto Guzzi V7.
It's a beautiful bike.
Yeah. So it's the Cafe Racer with the metallic red frame and the chrome tank, and it's a looker, and it is. And I think that's the prettiest bike I've ever had, to be honest. It's gorgeous, and it's a pure hipster Cafe Racer kind of deal, and not particularly practical, low bars, no wind protection whatsoever, but I love riding it. It's absolutely awesome.
I mean, none of your bikes have really got any wind protection, have they?
No.
If you looked at my bikes, both of them have got a fair bit of wind protection to them, and my history has all got wind protection there. What is it about not having the wind protection that does it for you? Why haven't you got big fairings?
Because I don't tow that much, to be honest. Like you go on very long tours down to Spain and stuff, and I think I would find it a bit arduous kind of having that amount of air in my face. But because I toot around and go on B roads and A roads, I don't get that fast to actually need it, and I like that really uninterrupted kind of wind in the face feel. You get all the scents and smells. I don't know, there's something quite pure about not having the airflow kind of directed. Some people hate it, but I absolutely love it. It really is Superman stuff where you're going through the air and
I know what you mean.
Yeah, particularly on the Guzzi, because you can't see a lot of the bike. You're really canted forward, and all you can see is the headlamp.
You kind of want to put your feet up at the back and
weird,
go and fly.
Yeah, like that speed trail guy. But no, it's really cool. If I was like you guys and drove down to Spain and did 1,000 miles or something, I'd definitely get something with a bit of a screen on it.
Because you've done courier work as well in the past, haven't you? So, and when you were doing that on naked bikes as well?
Yeah, completely naked,
Would you have done it on something different around town like that? Or
I probably would have got a Puig fly screen or something, like a mini screen or something, but you need to be really on it and manoeuvre around cars and stuff. You can't have something that big and bulky, so it'd have to be something quite narrow and not protruding out from the side of the bike. But in London the speeds are quite low as well, and you've got a lot of accessories. I had my phone on there, and you had a CB radio, and there's mitts on the handlebars and stuff, so a lot of it would get in the way of a fairing. I never really saw many running faired bikes doing couriering, to be honest.
No, you don't really.
No, and I think that's the thing. But the only problem is if you get an out of town job in winter, you are absolutely frozen. But I never really got out of town that much, to be honest.
A lot of companies will actually keep you in town anyway.
They do,
for the bike. Going back to your current bikes, I mean, what's good about them and what's bad about them, and who would you kind of like recommend them to?
I think the bad thing is none of them have got a sixth gear. Yeah, that's a big thing nowadays. If you're ever touring, they are revving high on the motorway. So I'd maybe go for one of the newer Bonnevilles, the water-cooled ones, like the T120 with 6 speeds. No ABS and not much technology, basically, no traction control or anything.
Is that good or bad though?
ABS is a big one. Yeah, when you lock that front, you do know about it. Yeah, you hit a manhole cover and it's scary. Fortunately, I grew up with bikes like that, so I'm kind of a little bit canny to that front locking up and just getting off it really quick. I remember on the BMW, the R1100S, the Bumblebee one, that had ABS and it was fantastic. I remember hitting a patch of gravel on a Yorkshire kind of moors road, and it just was perfect. It just didn't lock it cadence braked. It got across the gravel, and I felt my front going a little bit, but as soon as I hit solid asphalt again, it cadence braked me out of trouble, and it was brilliant. Definitely ABS. That's a big one. Oh yeah, I don't like the chain on the Bonneville as well. I hate chains. I love shaft drives or belts. It's just the look with those bikes is the good thing. I like looking cool, really.
Pretty much all your bikes are more for people that are going to be doing shorter distances and having fun rather than necessarily pushing hard long distances and using day to day.
Mine are the last generation of those retro bikes where I think they kind of thought them as city bikes or like cool looking bikes that people did short distances on. I think the genre of that type of bike, like cruisers, like the Indian Scout and Bonnevilles and stuff like that, they've nearly all got 6th gears now and ABS and touring packages and stuff like that. So I think they've realised that they were limiting their market a little bit, and they've kind of expanded it to make them more leggy, more powerful, and a lot more versatile for that sort of thing. So you can, if you get a more modern retro bike, I don't think the Guzzi V7's like that actually. I think that's still a bit of a buzzy kind of bike, but definitely the Triumphs, the Harleys, they used to really rattle your brain out. They're a lot smoother now. The engines have got more revvy and over square. And more kind of rev happy, so you can actually use them more as touring bikes, really.
Okay, so we've talked through your biking history, and now we go on to that question, which is the fun question and the kind of dream point. You can keep all of your 3 current bikes as well. You don't have to spend any money on maintenance or buying or anything like that. You can't sell them for money though. It's just, this is bikes I want in my garage to play with and enjoy, and you're allowed 4 of them. What 4 bikes would you have as your 4 dream bikes?
Right, my first would be a sports bike. The big thing with this is actually Kyle Fogarty, and I grew up watching him racing in superbikes, and I think it was, I can't remember how many championships he won, was it 5 or 7? I can't remember. It's the Ducati 916, and there's various different versions. There's the SP and really cool kind of Fogarty replica ones, but the one that I really like is the Senna edition, which Ayrton Senna, he kind of endorsed products that he thought were in line with his kind of image and quality and stuff like that. And he actually endorsed these 916s, and they come in, I think, silver. I think they did a white one, and they do them in like a carbon fiber graphite, and I love the silver one with the Senna S's on. And the most beautiful sports bike, because a lot of sports bikes are generic, but this is a fantastic trellis frame, Termini only exhaust coming out the back, a beautifully engineered, charismatic bike.
But so you talked about like your first sports bike and not really having a sports bike particularly. So is this more like I want to ride it, or is it like I want to have it in the garage and pet it? Is it?
I think I'd ride it because it's a V-twin, so it's a bit more lower in the rev range, more torquey rather than a 4. But I think it's more the charisma of it. I think that a lot of the Japanese sports bikes are very much lap time specials, and they all do the same architecture basically, and you know, they're kind of about shaving a tenth off here. I think Ducatis and Aprilias and MV Augustas particularly, and I love the Triumph triples as well. They're a bit different, and I think the Ducati is like the most ultimate, kind of real piece of art bike in sports bikes. Single-sided swing arm, underslung exhaust, quite minimal fairing as well for that type of bike. Not everything is all kind of covered in plastic panels. You can see the engine and all the mechanics in it and all the suspension and stuff like that. So it's a lot more mechanical looking and more kind of raw and more Italian, and that's kind of my thing really. Right, my second one, if I remind myself, BMW came out with the R18, the massive cruiser V-twin, based on 50s and 40s.
It's a beautiful looking bike.
I love it.
Absolutely stunning looking.
Because I love that type of bike anyhow, and that combined with a flat twin, each cylinder is 900cc, so it's got massive pistons going sideways, and I love that look, and I love the fishtail exhausts on it, and I love all the all black paintwork, and I just think they're awesome. I think they've really done a beautiful job on that. I can't afford one. I'll probably have to wait 10 years to get one, but they won't depreciate, and in about 10 years I'll probably get one when they're bottomed out, or so they won't go down anymore. But they're incredible.
No, I can see why you go for one of those. Very beautiful bike, and comfortable and capable of doing an awful lot of touring as
and
well.
You can get a good touring kit as well. I mean, there's a Bobber version as well, which if you were feeling not very practical, the Bobber looks awesome. But I love that open chrome drive shaft. They've, like on a normal swing arm shaft drive, it's in and out a sleeve. But that's actually got the rotating swing arm going into the back wheel, and I just love that. I think that's really cool. A bit of a show-off thing, but it's a bit different.
It's good though. Difference is good. Okay, number 3.
Another kind of different cruiser bike. There's a bike Harley did in the mid to late 2000s called the Crossbones. And
I know nothing about Harleys, to be honest.
And I'm not a massive Harley guy, but this thing's got a Springer front end, where it's not got telescopic forks. It's basically like designed more like a 40s front suspension, like a Bruff or something like that. So the spring is actually on the headstock and the shock, and I just think it looks fantastic. Quite a rare bike, they don't sell, and I think a lot of dealers can't work on the front suspension, so you've got a bit of a problem if you buy one, but I just think they look awesome. I love the retro kind of vibe of them. They've not got a conventional headlamp, it's just a really small little spot lamp thing, and it looks so 40s. And it's the kind of look that I like from my Indian. But they're a lot of money there. Again, they were about 20. They're, what are they now, about 20 years old? The oldest ones, about 18 years old and they're still about 12 grand.
I mean, they never really drop that much.
No, they don't.
Those sort of things, do they?
But if I saw one for good money, like a Cat D or something, I'd get one. Yeah.
There's an interesting point though, because you've talked about your first Bonneville was a Cat C.
Yeah.
And you talk about you wouldn't mind a Cat D now. I mean, a lot of people, they look at something like a Category C or a Category D bike and go, I'm not touching that.
Yeah.
For
anything. I think they're great. Yeah, particularly bikes that are retro bikes. I think when you get into bikes that are sports bikes that have a lot of high-end materials, delicate kind of castings, and you know, you get aluminium spar frames and stuff that can crack. I wouldn't touch a sports bike that had been dropped, but I think things like retro bikes where they break the peg or kind of the handlebars get bent or rear mudguard, you can take that off and modify it and get a kit to replace the rear mudguard or handlebars. You might fancy beach bars or something different. So, and you often get a third off the value. I remember my Bonneville, I got it for 2,400, and at the time they were going for about 3.5 grand, like similar mileage, and so you can get an absolute bargain.
But also, how much of that is down to the fact that you are very hands-on with your bike? You know, that kind of makes you feel more confident that you know what you're doing?
Yeah, I think that's it, and knowing what to look for, really. Because you can get sneaky little things, like you can get gear shaft, input shafts and stuff for the gear selection and stuff can be bent. Normally the pegs and the kind of levers are designed to be like sacrificial, but you can get stuff going into the engine. You need to know what to look for. You can be, it can be subtly damaged, so you've got to be quite keen about picking up on those little bits that go into the kind of engines or gearboxes and stuff. But if you've got a good mechanical knowledge, I think they're really good value. But the point is as well, you will get a hit when you try and sell them on. So they've generally got to be a bike that you want to keep for a long time. And if it's a bike that you can't afford at the time, sometimes you can creep in and get that bike that you want, like a Z900 or something. If you get a bottom end one that's had a not heavy drop, they can be really good value.
We're sidetracked. Let's go to your fourth then, your fourth and final one.
Right, this is the weirdest one. Another Ducati. It's an MH900E that they did in I think the early 2000s.
So you're going to have to talk me through this one.
Right, what it is, it's basically, I think it's based on a Ducati monster frame, but they did it as a tribute to Mike Hailwood, who was one of their riders in the 60s, and it's a glorious kind of like a retro modern racer meets kind of cafe style bike, and it's beautifully engineered. Everything on it is billet aluminium. It's kind of a cross between an old racer and some futuristic space age bike. It's got massive exhaust coming out the back, like two kind of rocket thrusters, and it's a real cool looking bike, and it's all retro 70s Ducati graphics, and they're all red and they just look awesome. They're a really cool looking bike. When you see the picture you'll think, well, you'll either hate it or think it's brilliant. They're a Marmite bike in the fact that you'll either hate it or love it, and I think they're awesome. But again, they're a lot of money. I can't. That's the point about doing the thing where you get dream bikes. I wouldn't pick something that you could buy for £3 grand, basically.
No, I know what you mean. I mean, I must admit, when I was thinking about dream bikes, one of the ones that I'd almost consider is a C90. But then, by the same token, it's a bike I could go out and buy.
You could have 5 in there.
Exactly. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
That's awesome.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Cool.
Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you're interested in taking part, you can find our contact details on the description of the video or in the channel description. Thanks for watching.
Pujama flip.
Pujama flip.